The minute you make yourself memorable, you are as viral as the video that someone else shares. What's the problem you're trying to solve? How big is the problem you're trying to solve? Why are you the right person to solve it? Right now, I am a curator of cool at some level. Measurability brings results, and results bring you measured deliverables, and therefore maybe even measured profit. The tools of technology have given us the right to be able to democratize art. Events engage your senses, and they engage all your senses.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Recast. I have today with me somebody who I'm probably meeting, after 15 years? Hi Roshan, how are you?
I'm good, Saurabh. So lovely to talk to you and to be able to see you as well.
Absolutely, Roshan. Likewise. I think I have to thank COVID for this. I think the last we saw each other was in 2007. And now we are here, sort of actually meeting virtually because of COVID.
At least one thing to thank COVID for, right?
That's right. So, Roshan, I think let me begin this discussion, by asking a question, that I'm quite interested in asking because I sort of went through your website. And I think I really find, the way you introduce yourself very, very interesting. You call yourself a slasher by profession. So why don't you use that, to sort of give a very quick introduction about you? And, what does this slasher by profession actually means?
So being a person, Saurabh, who's been on stage since he was 4 years old, I've had to devise various ways to engage an audience. And so I've thought of multiple introductions for myself. And I used to get extremely bothered when people would read half-page bios, right? And he's done this and he's done that and he's done whatever. And it was very difficult to pinpoint what I do because I genuinely am a multifaceted person and I love doing multiple things at the same time. And then one day I found this, this slash as on my keyboard. And I said, well, this defines me because I've had maybe 11 to 14 professions, not full professions. In some cases, like I've written lyrics for a song, for a film and done about 15 corporate songs. So I am a lyricist, but it's not my core job. And I've done theater professionally. So it is theater / radio / TV / event manager / entrepreneur / digital marketer / producer / spoken word artist. I mean, you can just keep adding to that. So that's where the slasher came. And I found that for introductions to younger audiences, it used to land really well. So I'm also a big one about saying that, can you land a message really well? So this used to get me the laugh as well as the understanding. So I started using slasher in that sense. I am not a serial killer. Nobody needs to worry about that.
Did I hear 14 different, actually professions?
Yes.
Wow. Which of this experience did you enjoy the most?
Engaging an audience is what I really like. And therefore, theater, because it is the toughest and the most rewarding. I mean, right. It's the most rewarding because the audience, you can see the white of your audience's eyes, as we say sometimes.
That's true.
And the response is immediate. You can feel a human shared emotion. I mean, the one thing that in the pandemic that possibly, while right now we are having a shared experience, it's still across a screen, and there is an energy to being together. I mean, when they say man is a social animal, I think we realize that during this time. So while many of my other professions have given me larger canvases and larger audiences, theater was the most demanding because it requires discipline and it requires rehearsal and it requires you to be present in every moment and present to the actors around you, present to the environment, present to your audience, and that I find personally very rewarding, very enriching. Put me in a theater space and I'm a different person. I don't know. I feel that there's a new energy coursing through my blood.
Right. So I think when you look back and, when you look back at all these 14 different professions, do you think one led to the other? Is there an inherent connection? I mean, probably theater gave you, the ability to, train on your voice, and that probably could have helped you to become a radio jockey. And then I think, because theater helped you to present yourself to the audience, I think, TV happened, I think, in your life. So would you say that, one sort of led to the other? And if you really have to stitch all those 14 professions together, can you just help us understand, how your journey has been?
Yep. So great question there, and I've actually always felt that there are layers that you keep adding. So one, of course, is that every time the medium used to change, the size of the audience used to change, right? I mean, in the theater, I was communicating just using my voice, but it was to an intimate audience in this, which was present in an auditorium, 500, 2,000 people max. But the minute there was a mic and the medium of broadcast became radio, it was me talking, but because of radio, I was now talking one to many, which is I was talking to a city on FM.
True.
And suddenly I had to change my voice from something which was a directed voice to a personal voice. Right? I was reading someone else's words in theater. I was under someone else's direction. In radio, it was my mind, my ideas, which I was communicating to people outside. When I went to television, I was now not talking to a city, I was talking to countries and continents, and frankly, at one time, across geographies. And so I had to find the lowest common denominator that bound people. But yes, at the core of all of these professions was personal communication.
Right.
The minute I set up agencies, I now had to convert all I had learned in personal communication, which was engaging an audience, keeping them interested, landing a message, keeping emotional empathy alive, because a lot of two-way communication, which was on radio and television, is about empathy. It's all about being able to read your audience. And so I carried those learnings to experiential marketing, which in those days was, of course, just event management, or below the line as they used to call it. And I could now transfer my skill to many other people. When you can transfer skills and create structure and spirit and bring it together, that's when you get companies. So that's when I had Encompass. When that medium evolved further and I got the chance to direct a film, I was now talking entertainment on the biggest canvas available, which is Bollywood. And it was a different learning, because what looks to you and a huge learning I had in cinema was that cinema is a medium which people can always go back and see again. So it is about the minutiae, as they say. It is about the minutest of details. It's about the one, leaf in the background that is looking at that moment out of sync. And in an event, you could let it go because that live moment will pass. On radio, you could let it go because you don't want to lose that energy.
True.
But in film, because it's a recorded medium and it can be replayed, there is a lot more detail. I mean, they say that in cinema, God lies in the details. But again, I was, and which is why perhaps in cinema, the other thing I had to contend with was that I was dealing with many new people. I mean, the cinematographer knows what looks best. The editor knows what's the pattern. The musician or the music director knows what's going to work with music. So you're suddenly now working with a whole bunch of creative greats. It's not you who's just adding ingredients to the recipe. Each of those ingredients is a live ingredient. So it was a completely different experience. Then from there, when I went into digital, it was a new medium where there was an audience which was talking to each other in bits and bytes across different devices. And I felt that while some of the rules which I had employed on radio, television, film, theater also applied themselves to communication on these kind of screens, it needed new age communicators. And now I put on the role of a director, which I had learned in cinema and theater. And I started finding the right talent. And I think that's when the journey continued. So I think there are two layers. One is a personal layer of something you learned that you kept changing. And the second is the understanding of the medium and its scope and its benefits and its positives and negatives.
So two key takeaways for me. One, I think you spoke about personal communication, and I think some of those learnings, you've also documented that in a book that you wrote called Speechless. So if you can just talk about that a little bit more, and I think I would urge all my audience, to go and buy one copy, because I've read that and it's an amazing, amazing book. So why don't you just give a gist of that, and then I'll move on to the next question that I have.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. And the book actually happened because I was pained by hearing people, very well-meaning people, get on stage and try to engage an audience and fail miserably. This is largely CMOs, CEOs, brand heads or whatever, who who take the position they have been given to address an audience as granted because of the position they are in. When a host or an MC or a comedian or an actor or a performer steps on stage, we go there because one rule that you are taught is you're as good as your last show.
That's right.
And you are paid for your performance. So there's a line under Speechless which says, what would you say if your life depends on it? And this is what I tell all my performer friends. Go on stage as if your life depends on this show. That if the audience gives you a standing ovation, you will end up getting 5 more years added to you. Because the minute you make yourself memorable, you are as viral as the video that someone else shares.
True.
I've had people who've gone back and written to me 15 years later saying, that one thing that you said has still stayed with us, that one story you told us. I had all these learnings and I was genuinely seeing a whole generation of hosts, people, as I said, who were given the position or the privilege to speak, completely disregarding it from a perspective of the use of language. I mean, the number of people who use incorrect grammar, who use slangs and half phrases and pass it off as this is the communication of today. And I don't agree. I feel that you need to put in the effort. You need to put in so much more. And so I started devising workshops to train people. WPP does this amazing 2-day conference called Stream. And in Stream, every year, I would just by chance, I mean, and you could sign up for anything, and I would sign up and say, I will conduct workshops. And it was amazing, Saurabh, because when I conducted the workshop, I had they normally do these workshops, and it's a little bit of a boast, but, allow me that most workshops there happen in small rooms which can take 20 to 30 people. They had to shift my workshop to the main auditorium because 200 people registered.
Wow.
And so I said, there is an interest. And when I finished the entire workshop, everybody loved it. They gave me a standing ovation. And as I walked out, Siddharth Banerjee, who at that time was the marketing head for Vodafone and a junior of mine from my college, came outside and said, Roshan, love what you do, but you make it too easy. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, this is experiential learning of 20 plus years that you have. But for you, it sounds a lot easier, or, it's not as easy to do or execute. So I found that intriguing. And he says, I've also put together some notes on public speaking. Can I send them to you? And I said, sure. And he sent me the notes, and I found that his notes had a little more structure. I am, again, being a live performer, I can mold things as they go along because I'm almost, as I said, I'm sensing my audience. I'm sensing how they feel. I'm constantly saying, maybe I was going to tell this story, but this is not going to land. Let me go here. So I keep evolving my communication.
Because that's your source of energy as well. I mean, you are sort of constantly deriving energy from them.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And one of my old radio professors used to tell me that shows need to flow like water because water doesn't stop anywhere, right? It just flows.
True.
And that's what I used to do. But Siddharth bought that structure. Siddharth asked me some of the questions, and at times I used to joke with him saying, oh my God, these are boring questions. He says, see, they appear boring to you sometimes, but for someone else, they require that. And after about 3 months of a lot of deliberation, discussions, copious cups of tea, we sat together and I said, what we need is an acronym. We need something that can hold people together. And Speechless, the word, then plays out into, each of those alphabets stands for something. So S stands for setup, and P talks about preparation, and E says what's the engine that you're going to have, and from there on. But each of these is a chapter and a learning and a whole host of learning. It's filled with anecdotes and stories. And right at the end, I said that there are some people who, when they're on stage, sometimes they just leave me speechless with their communication, whether it is Mandira Bedi, who took on the cricketing gauntlet. She was the first woman who came into doing cricket, but did it with so much pizzazz and did it so differently and went through her ups and downs, but then became one of the strongest female voices. Or Mini Mathur, who was an MTV VJ, but I mean, that she has evolved gracefully, beautifully as an anchor. Or Cyrus Sahukar, who was somebody I trained as a student, but who is the wittiest person I know. If you see him on live stage, he's so funny, incredible sense of humor. Or Harsha Bhogle, whose depth of knowledge and humility are legendary. Or Gaurav Kapoor, who's like a younger brother to me, but I think Gaurav is the face of cricket. What he does with Breakfast with Champions, the world has seen. But, he bought he brought a joy to cricket broadcast that wasn't serious, right? I mean, he made it light, he made it funny, he made it a lot more consumer friendly. So while I actually wanted to interview about 20 different people, I did 5 and put them in the book right at the end, and that's what Speechless became. And and the joy was that the day the book came out, believe you me, we didn't have to market it too much because it just spread. Me and Siddharth are both very grateful that it's an Amazon bestseller. And of course, if the people listening buy some copies, we'll remain on the list.
Great. I will come to my second question in a bit, which is around Encompass and, around experiential marketing that you just spoke about. But I think you just touched upon, that great workshop that happened where, WPP had to shift everybody to a bigger auditorium. And I think it was a huge hit. Had you done that workshop during COVID digitally or virtually, do you think it would have received the same kind of response?
So let me tell you that I did those workshops, and I'm in fact just about to start next month. I'm starting a business storytelling course online because I have conducted multiple workshops online where, because geography is now history, there is no constraint. Somebody from Netherlands, from the US, from India, from the smallest city can tune in. I've had on certain days when I was doing my podcasting workshop, over 2,000 people attend. And it's crazy. But what people need to understand is that the minute you're doing a virtual event or a virtual workshop, you have to change your mind from live to broadcast. You have to almost think of yourself as a broadcast host.
Help us understand that, because I think for folks like me, we don't get the difference. Right. So what's the difference between live and broadcast?
So look at two people. Look at the cricket commentator who is in the stadium, and look at the person who normally sits in studio and throws to the audience. Right.
Right.
The difference in one and the other is that one person is reacting live to what's happening. Right. I mean, if you remember, the radio commentary was ball by ball, minute by minute, etc., because the person was in the stadium. Right. The person who is sitting in the commentary box and broadcasting is doing it keeping in mind that I have an audience to engage. Therefore, in the virtual communication piece, if you look at the screen we communicate in, there are 3 elements. One is the chat that is going on, right? One is the participants who are there in front of you, who might be live and talking to you. And the third, of course, is the material. So there it's a cricket match, here it might be a presentation. So it's presentation, participants, and what's happening in the chat. And you have to keep all these 3 elements constantly in mind. You switch to a slide, you go to the chat, you bring in a participant. So very often people lose people in virtual communication because they're so busy communicating and talking that they forget that everybody else is invisible.
Yep.
And is slowly becoming even more invisible because they would have by now turned and looked at their child or started reading a book or turned away. So how do you keep them engaged? So very often, if you see the hooks that come in television broadcast are click here, buy this now, there's the commercial break. What are you doing? What is your commercial break in a virtual thing? Are you giving a commercial break? Are you giving them that incentive? Are you asking them that quiz question? Are you making the invisible visible and calling up somebody saying, hey, that's a great comment, Saurabh, lovely. Can I get you up here to give us a quick response? So interactivity, engagement, making the invisible visible are some of the elements of virtual communication. The other big element is giving other people the opportunity to even consume. See, in live events, what happens is things happen and you have natural breaks. The break is the convenience break. The break is between speaker 1 and speaker 2. But what do you do that? There is no water cooler here. So how do you create water cooler moments on virtual? You set up meeting rooms and tell people, you know what? I want you to go for 5 minutes and I want you to talk about the most embarrassing moment in your life. Now, it has nothing to do with the core construct, and obviously you can construct them basis. I mean, if you are having an insight session with 50 people, you could turn and say that, okay, I'll tell you what's the one thing that's happened in your life that you think is extremely telling about you? Go into a meeting room and chat with people. What happens automatically is there is an informality of now we are 5 people in a meeting room, not 500. We are not in public view, we are in private view.
Right.
And this becomes that little conversation that used to happen in the corridor at an event. And this is what happens in row number 5, where somebody is showing somebody a joke.
Yeah.
So you have to mirror all of these human moments from there and build them into your broadcast philosophy. And see how so many second screen experiences in sport do it. It's beautifully done by cricket. I think now does it beautifully. So when Hotstar knows that yes, you're watching a match, but you're also maybe looking at your kid at home, or maybe you're also talking to your friend. And this generation is multitaskers as it is. So they will constantly engage you with a quiz, will their next ball be a 6? So all of these elements, there's so much to learn. I'm actually now thinking very soon to do another workshop on just saying, virtual communication and the joy of virtual communication.
That's right. I mean, I think the way we gamify, the whole virtual experience, I think that's where the trick really lies. I mean, I think just this morning, we were having like a company offsite, and my sort of technology team was sharing, these couple of apps, Prezi Video, and there's a new one called right?
Yes.
It just sort of changes the way people look at you on screen. And I think there are those little gimmicks that you can do, keep the audience engaged, but at the same time you can then really deliver your content in a very impactful way. So I think that was
Absolutely.
super, and I think this whole space is changing so fast. So I think let me now go back to the question that probably interests me the most. And that's about experiential marketing, and that's also about Encompass, which was your company, and I think that's probably one of the first and one of the largest companies in event marketing in India.
Right.
I will come to your company in a bit because that's where a lot of learnings are for me.
Right.
But let me first understand from a practitioner's point of view, somebody who's really spent a long time in this business. For somebody who's not from the marketing world, they would understand what an event industry is. For marketeers, I mean, they will use very different kinds of terminologies, below the line, through the line communication. And I think if you go to a modern, marketing company, they will probably call this as a part of experiential marketing.
Right.
Give me your view. How do you look at, sort of last 20, 25 years? How have you seen this industry changing? What has changed? And then I think, we'll talk a little bit more about, the digital and the non-digital brands and how they really look at experiential marketing from their point of view.
Events have been happening since the first set of people sat around a fire and shared stories.
That's right.
Because while it was a micro event, there was one person who at that moment possibly had a story to tell, and they had a fire which became the gathering point, and X number of people sat around it, and there was a transference of knowledge or entertainment or a shared experience. So typically to me, moments which become shared experiences are events. Now, how big or small changes their context. When that same moment happens in a stadium at the opening ceremony of an IPL, you have to put on the lens of what I call 1 to million. My God, you're communicating not just 1 to 1, but 1 to million. When the same thing happens in a mall as an activation where there's a car on display and you tell somebody saying, would you like a test drive? It's 1 to 1. And when the same thing happens in an auditorium with possibly a particular audience that is more defined, which is the sales force or the PR people or company CMOs, or like what's happening in Davos, sometimes it's just people getting together. So a defined audience, that's one to many. So I used to always turn and say that, 1 to 1, 1 to many, 1 to million is the space of events. The lens keeps changing and therefore various things keep changing. But it's happened from the very beginning. I mean, whether it was, Chandragupta Maurya, if you remember, when he was king, around that point in time, there's this whole thing about Kautilya and Chanakya, which people talk about. And Chanakya actually turns and says that if you want to keep your praja, your people in your country busy, you must do lots of events. And that's what used to happen always. There was always events that used to happen, whether they were the gladiatorial battles that used to happen in the Colosseum. Those were all big events. Whether the Olympics, which started, in the early days when races were, etc., were done. These were just ways of keeping your audience engaged, whether it was a harvest festival or whether it was a religious festival. over a period of time, all of these informal or slightly formal, if they happen from the powers that be, all of these things got certain number of rules and methods and pomp and pageantry and celebration and tradition, and all of these things happened. At some point in time, when brands emerged, the idea was, does a brand make a lasting impression on people? And that's when brand focused event marketing began. And brand focused event marketing then became again into this whole one-to-one, one-to-many, one-to-million space. And over the last 30 odd years, as I have seen this industry in India, it has gone from the traditional unorganized briefcase boutiques, one or two people who would come together maybe to facilitate and put together services, to frankly being what I think is a highly evolved part art, part science. Because when it comes with insight and consumer insights, etc., it's a beautiful, devised piece of communication which can land a message, which can have a call to action. The changes that have happened is that this industry has very often aggregated and de-aggregated. I think that somehow is the whole advertising cycle, right? I mean, you have these behemoths that come up and then they disintegrate, and then again they come up. I mean, but it's a cyclical thing that keeps happening. So in India, we've had this happen. We've always had the Wizcrafts, the Fountainheads, the Phase Ones, the Encompasses that happened. And when Encompass actually happened, it was to fill a need gap. I was a host in Delhi. I used to be called to MC lots and lots of events. And while I was doing that, I would feel extremely sad when I had to go and work really hard to make a bad event work. Right. And what I mean by that is that somebody had not planned and thought through everything. And being a communicator, having studied communication, it would be so simple. I mean, if you've got 200 people waiting in the pre-function area, are you doing something to engage them?
Right.
If you've got people coming together, have you built a theme song which they can carry away, which takes the key message and transfers it? So I was using what I had learned in theater and radio and television, etc., and putting all of these ideas. But I was always doing it for other people, and very often it's a bit of a even today I would call it a little bit of a wild west kind of thing, that people will take your ideas and not give you credit, etc. And I didn't like that. So at one stage I said, I can fill this need gap by creating an agency that best resembles an advertising agency, because that's what brands are comfortable dealing with. And I had Sandeep Goyal, who used to head Rediffusion at that point in time, and I actually learned from Sandeep how he used to run his agency. So while he would often call me because I was the star in Delhi who he would take occasionally to sell things like Baba Zarda and NIT and I don't know what all. It was really funny. But it was amazing. He was the best pitch master you could come across. And learning from him, learning structure, etc., I put together and cobbled together an agency. And 1997 to 99, when with the initial early days, people, when I used to ask people to join us, they didn't know what to tell their parents. What do you do? Right? And I used to keep telling them that, you've got to tell them this whole thing about one-to-one, one-to-many. They said, nahi samajh mein aata. But I would still try and explain it the best that I could. I think over the years, it has now evolved into a lot of learning. So, and it has also gone into areas that we never thought. For example, nobody thought that social events would become a multi-billion-dollar industry.
True.
But today, the largest sector in India is social events. So weddings are the largest thing, and I keep saying that people there very often don't have to worry about brand colors and brand ethos, etc. As long as the couple and the parents are happy, everyone's happy.
That's right.
But doing that is a really tough task. Then political events or government events governments have started doing events to showcase themselves, and I mean Singapore excels at this. You've seen that. I mean, the number of events that they do, and it's done with a very conscious view on presenting. Dubai does it beautifully. India has started doing it beautifully. I think in the last two regimes, they have really understood the soft power of events.
That's right.
So whether it's doing the BRICS summit or the Indo-Asia, the Indo-Africa summit that we did, or the South Asian Games, all of these. So now there's political events. Then you must understand that organized religious events are becoming huge.
Yeah.
And these used to be the evangelical events of the West. But today, when a Sri Sri Ravi Shankar does an event or a Baba Ramdev does an event, look at the attendance. There are thousands upon thousands of people. And frankly, these are the largest sectors. Brand events come after this today. I mean, this is where brand events is where we started, but brand events are, there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more work, a lot more reward because you've got measurable
KPIs attached to it, yeah.
KPIs, etc., which are there, which makes it really deliverable. And then, of course, I used to turn and say that this is the space where everything from an IPL opening ceremony to a international conference for a brand, to a brand activation, to a product launch, to shopper marketing, to brand retail activation. I mean, you can just keep going on. Rural marketing, and rural marketing again is while it's still a little bit of a dark area, because nobody has been able to completely harness that. We've been trying a lot as Encompass, but these are all the disciplines. So I think it has evolved, become much, much bigger. I mean, there was a report from Ernst & Young which said that the Indian industry, for many years, it said is 10,000 odd crores, the organized industry. And we actually, last year, the Event and Entertainment Management Association, I became the president of, and the entire team sat together and said, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Our industry size is maybe 50 times that.
Right.
So our estimate is that we are not 10,000 crores, but 500,000 crores. If you look at the entire sector. But again, I mean, we are trying to put together some surveys, etc., to prove to people how big this space is. It's still very disorganized.
It is.
The last trend that has worked well here is that, nobody has worked out a metric of measurement for this space. And digital is winning, purely because everything is measurable.
True.
But there was a time that we tried unsuccessfully. Sukrit and I had worked for about 3.5 years to come out with a metric called return on experience.
Yeah.
But, we were not able to find the right set of people who could actually work with us. And I also found that there was a big pushback from many industry people who said, but why do you want us to be measurable? Why, and I was like, because measurability brings results, and results bring you measured deliverables, and therefore maybe even measured profit. But again, I think that's the one gap even now that exists. Technology has gone, it's grown leaps and bounds. I remember the early days where it used to take us 3 to 6 hours to set up a projector.
Right. In fact, right. I have a friend, who used to work, for one of the political parties, sort of recently, and now he sort of shifted to his corporate job. And he used to tell me that, the way they used to count the number of people who used to come for a particular rally is through using drones. Right.
Correct.
And then, they just sort of measure the distance between two shoulders, and, so many gaps sort of, represent how many people, have sort of turned up. And what would come on news, versus, the actual count, there was always that kind of gap, and, he was always sort of, actually defending.
I'll tell you that I've always said this, that when auto shows, etc. happen, I'm a geek and I love discovering new tech. Mm-hmm. So there was a time that there was this beautiful, event summit that used to happen of all places in LA. Sorry, not in LA, but in Vegas. And I used to go there with Sukrit, and we would spend the day discovering new technology. And there were some amazing things people were working on. For example, using Bluetooth technology, beacons and Bluetooth to see how many people were present.
True.
Or somebody who had used pressure sensitive mats to see how many people had actually stepped onto that area.
Wow.
So many people come up with these innovations, but the other problem of our industry has always been that there is very little knowledge sharing. Everybody thinks that they've discovered a secret sauce and can they milk that cow for a period of time.
Right. Let me just go back to, what you just shared. I think, you learned a few lessons about how to run an agency from Sandeep.
Right.
Because he was a great pitch master. Distill it for us. What did you learn in 30 seconds? How did you learn to pitch? I mean, what was he doing?
What I learned was that you identify a need gap, you blow it out of proportion, you provide a solution for it that, suddenly seems, oh my God, you've got the magical solution. And then you say, now you pay me and I'll tell you the rest.
Okay. So I think magnification is sort of an important aspect of it.
Identifying a need gap and identifying a unique need gap that makes the person in front sit up. Nowadays, when I talk to startups very often, my other mentor, Rajesh Sawhney, he tells me always saying, What's the problem you're trying to solve? How big is the problem you're trying to solve? Why are you the right person to solve it? You know, and I often go in with that. Of course, in events you add a lot of pizzazz, etc., to this whole thing. The other thing that happened, I mean, and while you asked me to distill the pitch part, the other thing that happened was that 2 years into setting up Encompass, we had a brilliant person called Sue Fertal who had worked with Saatchi and worked with some of the best brands, and she was a true experiential marketeer from the US. And she had come to India because her fiance at that time was working at the Marriott, and he was heading sales. And they just said, okay, India will be a great exotic adventure maybe. And she landed, and she got into Rediffusion as their director of lifestyle marketing. And she got in touch with me, and 2 years later, after having worked in India, she moved on from Rediffusion and actually came and joined us.
Wow. Okay.
And in that relationship, she actually bought what I genuinely value as one of the biggest strengths of Encompass, which is that she built systems and processes.
Yeah.
Before that, what happens is many startups, and you'll hear of these stories of people working 24 hours, and oh my God, we're working towards a goal, and we have no work-life balance. But again, most places start as wild, wild west till the sheriff comes in town and lays down the rules. And she was our sheriff. She came in and laid down some rules. What happened, and I often tell this story to people, is that when you bring a lot of structure to a completely unstructured place, some people just don't respond to it well, and they feel that, oh my God, it becomes so rigid. Where's the fun gone? Where's everything gone? And I realized that for these people, breaking them into those systems was needed, and maybe it required a lot more time. So maybe it required a lot more offsites and getting together, etc. But again, remember, I'm talking of 97 to 98, 99.
Right.
Very, very early days. And then I stepped in to say, okay, there needs to be a balance between passion and process, spirit and systems. And you must find the right balance. And even today, in anything that I do, there are days that I have walked into an Encompass thing and seen that a team who has worked on an event has come back to office, and I have suddenly told my admin saying, can you get 5 masseurs who are available on Urban Clap to come here and just give them all a massage? It's just suddenly, it perks people up, but it's that one perk that suddenly brought spirit.
Right.
It's not in the system. It's not something which is put down in an HR manual. But you can bring delight. Before bringing customer delight, bring delight to your own people.
I mean, if you take care of your people, they will take care of you
but
in front of clients.
If what you're doing, let people discover the joy of what they are doing, and give that joy to them sometimes. It's the most difficult thing in the world to organize a get-together for event people. But when you do it, don't do it half-baked, because they will scoff at it and tell you, my God, I do so much better, and this is what you did for me.
True.
So you've got to work 10 times harder. You've got to make it really unique and fun and different, and we've always done that. So at one point in time, we had a position at Encompass called CFO, right? And that stood for Chief Fun Officer.
Oh, okay. That's a nice take.
Yeah, because you need that. If Bangladesh can have a happiness, Bhutan can be number 1 in the happiness index. Why can't companies have a happiness index? Why can't we look and measure things like that?
True. So I think in the whole experiential marketing space, when you now interact with brands that are digital, those brands that where the legacy has been digital, does the meaning and the context for experiential marketing change for those brands versus those that are still sort of, in brick and mortar? And why I ask that question, because I think when I speak to digital brands, I think they are more interested in the user experience part of it. They just want, the right kind of buttons and, the right kind of placement on the screen, because I think their interaction is all virtual. Whereas I think when we speak to, say, for example, insurance companies and banks, that still have, sort of a brick and mortar presence, I think they're still interested in doing, events and concerts and, engaging, people with fun and entertainment. So when you interact with these two very different kinds of companies, do you see a difference in the way people expect from an experiential marketing company?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's a very good question, because, what happens is that people who are over 40 and have experienced a lot of the non digital part of life as well. I mean, the people who worked maybe in the early 2000s or whatever, etc., and therefore they everything was physical. And again, I keep saying this, that at the end of the day, can you have a virtual meal? You cannot.
Yeah.
Right? I can show you the prettiest picture of Singapore noodles, but until you've gone and had them, would you know it? If I can show you the best, hoisin sauce, whatever, but if you can't smell it, can you experience it? So you must understand that events engage your senses, and they engage all your senses. Now, till the day that I cannot bring each of those senses alive across a virtual screen, you have to give me the power of knowing, of having, the strength of many years of experience to bring this power. And many brands allow you that. Many brands, because of not having a complete understanding of what they do, end up fulfilling their personal wish lists. I have often turned and said that many events end up becoming the personal wish list of the brand manager. This is the singer I like. This is the color I prefer. This is the food I would want to serve. But you need today to find people who are experts in these fields, who can understand so take the strength of digital, understand your consumer well, but then take the strength of live to deliver them that which makes them different from a robot. What makes us different? The fact that we have feelings, the fact that we have a conscience, the fact that we can transmit what we have learned in different formats. Take all those things and use them, which people don't do. And you're right, people keep getting obsessed with events very often, right? Have rigid timelines because there is a date of delivery. Very often in digital products, you could, while you do have a date of delivery, but you could do beta 1, beta 2, version 3, version 4. But an event, you can't turn and say half the stage is ready, the next will be ready in the next event. Come. So I keep trying to explain this to people. And the thing that is often missing, and again, I think this is important for event companies that want to become big, and transparency and trust are two critical areas. Today, digital companies, the world's biggest digital companies are facing these two issues, right? Trust and transparency. But events also have very often been built in this. It's the Wizard of Oz. It's the magician who comes and does the trick, and as long as you don't know the trick at the back, you're okay. But are you willing to pay the person the value they deserve for doing that trick? Now, the problem again with digital agencies is everything is commoditized. Today only my team had to submit a virtual tender. Mm-hmm. Now, fine, I'll submit a virtual tender and you'll evaluate saying X number of lights put together in a row cost you so and so amount. Mm-hmm. Fine. But the light designer who makes it happen.
Yeah.
How do you pay for his years of experience or her years of experience? And these are, I was doing a wonderful conversation with Adam Davidson, who's written The Passion Economy yesterday. And this is a message that I think is in his book, and it's something that I've been telling my teams for the longest time. Cost into time is not equal to value.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. Value can be, today as a host, when I anchor a show, even today, I charge money that sometimes makes clients fall off their seats. Mm-hmm. But I know that I deliver that value. You can get someone at maybe 100 the price. That's okay. You pay peanuts, you get monkeys. That's okay.
Roshan, I think what I like about this conversation is that I think you have had a very balanced sort of professional life. I think we started by where you described slasher by profession. And I think if somebody had to hear that, one would automatically think that, you are a very creative person, right? And then you got into business, which meant that, you started the business of creativity. You actually started, sort of selling creativity for a price and for the value, that you wanted to deliver. However, I think if I just now segue into, the new passion that you have, which is probably your newest baby, and that's Kommune. It has got nothing to do with creativity, because I think at the fundamental level, at its core, I think what you've done is you've leveraged the the power of network. You've created a community, and I think that's where probably the word commune really comes from.
Absolutely.
You've really leveraged the power of community in this case. And then I think once you bring people together, you put them in a room, the creativity would flow. People would tell stories. People would tell, they would engage each other. Is that an insight that you had when you started Commune? Or, your approach to setting up Commune was through the route of creativity that, hey, I just need to get like 5 more creative people in the room and, record it and, broadcast it and let's see, what magic it does. Help us understand, the approach.
As artists, you are always between, you're walking on eggshells because you don't know what you're creating next. Is it going to be a mega success or a mega failure? And therefore, there is a lot of insecurity. And therefore, most artists, by their nature, end up communing somewhere. Theatre artists in Bombay would meet at Prithvi.
Yeah.
You would always find art students will have one adda that they will gather at. Quizzers will have their own space. I mean, everybody, they'll all have their own little communities. Now, you've always built communities, right? The difference that has happened in the last couple of years is tools that make communing easier have come up. Now, What do you need to build a commune? You need to have obviously some shared values. But you also need to be able to help people congregate. You need to be able to broadcast what they do. You need to be able to curate what they are doing. So I think there's actually a lot of creativity in commune. And did it come later? I don't know. I felt that there was a generation that needed a platform to share its voice. And very often we get so subsumed by pop culture that subculture starts dying.
Right.
And there have been some people, some organizations in India that have always been the champions of, subculture, whether it's places like Prithvi Theatre, places like, organizations like OML, Only Much Louder, AIB for comedy. There are so many of these. But in India, it was still really looked down upon. So what happened is that this whole idea of getting people together, giving them a platform, doing it consistently, and allowing them to, as we say, create, curate, collaborate, and finally commercialize. Art very often again gets stuck in the happy space of, oh, it's so nice, but are you being paid for it? An artist ultimately also needs, you can't live on love and fresh air. And monetization was critical as well. So I think it's very important for an artist to first feel I belong.
That's right.
Then they need to learn I belong to a great community where there are some shining stars that I can look up to who show me that this is possible. So very often, when I go to colleges, schools, competitions which I judge, and I do a lot of this, just my presence very often is reassuring to them to say, he did all that I am doing today and made it.
Right.
Very often you call celebrities just because of, they've got something that they're doing currently which you love. But I think there is also a very big thing of saying, X did so I can. And that's why Commune beautifully has a set of people who are at the top of their peak of their profession. If there was a creative Maslow's hierarchy, they are self-actualized almost. But they are also there because even they need to feed off others. They need to feel part of a thing. So I think if you look at the Commune logo, it's got a sharing sign. And when the logo came about, the agency that worked with us on creating the logo, Karma, the designer actually said 3 things to me, and which is what completely sold me on the way the logo is. That the dots which seem to be in the K are not dots, they are pebbles, because creativity is constantly like a pebble in water. It's always evolving, it's always being changed by the things around it. So if you actually zoom into the logo, you see it doesn't look like a perfect circle, but it looks like this pebble.
Okay.
The second is this sharing sign, because what we do, we share. And at communes, you share of your earning, of your learning, of your creativity, of your fears, of your passion. And the third thing is that by just bringing diverse pebbles together, it takes 2 pebbles which are struck together to create a fire. And similarly, if you bring a whole bunch of these and create sparks, what will happen? And that's it. So we started with a lot of this unformed thought. I mean, that you know that very often I feel that by serendipity, I'm doing something which then the world gives a name.
Yeah.
I was doing events and it became experiential marketing. I said that this is not about Facebook likes when I met Varun and Rohit and I invested in Glitch. I said, there is a new medium which requires new rules and new ways of communication, and I invested in that. And that suddenly became this whole thing about, these are digital agencies which are going to do things in a very different manner. And then again, with Commune, I just feel that the tools of technology have given us the right to be able to democratize art. And all of these things that I spoke about are important to democratize art.
Right. So where are you going with Commune? And, where is Roshan Abbas going next? Are they both traveling in the same direction? Or
Roshan Abbas is a traveling Wilbury who goes from place to place. I'm sometimes a Maven. I'm sometimes, there is this beautiful book called The Art of Looking Sideways, which I would highly recommend to people. And that book is a creative person's collection of things that intrigue him, shiny things that a jackdaw used to carry into its nest. So I'm doing that all the time. Every day with my team, I'm saying, did you try this app? Did you see that video? Did you meet this person? Whatever. So
you're not happy with your 14 professions. You want to keep adding more slashes.
I think right now I am a curator of cool at some level, and I do that. That's why I said that in an article sometime back, saying, I'm the curator of cool. I genuinely find cool things and then I introduce them to people, and if something happens, it happens. So I like doing that,
Or are you the one sort of, translating pop culture into subculture?
Correct. Or subculture into pop culture.
Or subculture, so, vice versa, yeah.
Right, because I think actually the big thing lies in that. If you can find... See, I wrote an article day before, which is now doing well, where I said, is this the tipping point of spoken word? Amanda Gorman performing at the inauguration for Joe Biden and now performing at the Super Bowl. The winner of America's Got Talent this time being a spoken word poet. Coca-Cola's new campaign having George the poet talking about it. What is this saying? It's saying subculture is becoming pop culture. Right. And so if a brand wants to invest right now in getting 5 poets to come and even perform for them, because they'll be honest, they will be forthright, and they will put emotions into words in such a beautiful way that you'll want to share it with the world. Now that's just a great thing to do. But I believe that tipping point has come. Commune also for me has now reached that tipping point. What started as 15 people in a room telling stories is now a platform for any creator who wants to tell a story. So our ambition is to help every creator be the best version of themselves. Now, how can we do that? By providing you all that I said. So we've now created in our head this little pyramid of creativity where we say that you enter as maybe just as a consumer who says, I want to belong to this land of creativity. And then we feel that we are almost going to hold your hand and take you through that entire journey. And therefore, we are focusing this year, and the pandemic taught us this, that people wanted to invest in themselves during the pandemic, right? They either wanted to be entertained, educated, or, they wanted to be engaged at some level. And we do a lot of this, but wanting to be a better version of yourself, wanting that little work-life balance. I mean, the number of people who took on meditation, yoga, etc., right? Suddenly people started finding that extra time to say, am I leading a fulfilled life? So I think Commune is hoping that it can help you lead a creatively fulfilled life by providing the ability to create content, the ability to learn how to do good content, right? And to constantly give you experiences where you can engage with other people in the community. So I think those are the 3 focus areas for this year.
Roshan, I had a lovely experience of chatting with you. It's always a pleasure, to hear your thoughts and, to sort of read, what you write and to listen to, actually what you say, on YouTube. So thank you so much for doing this, and I'll see you around.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. And thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you for contributing to that, to the posts on LinkedIn. I'm really enjoying your insights, and I'm trying to rediscover the fun creator in you, because I thought I brought a little bit of that out in that last post of Bollywood dialogues. That
Bollywood is a passion, so it just sort of happened. I just sort of looked at your post and I said, okay, I have to write something, and I just sort of did that on the
yeah,
fly.
but I mean, fun fact. I had to jinx the previous night when I was thrown this thing saying, "Can Bollywood teach you entrepreneurship?" I said, "Of course it can," and now it's becoming a series because the number of people who are responding. So thank you for being part of my journey, and I hope you continue to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, Roshan. Lovely having you. Bye bye.